It's astounding, but some will say that I went crazy a long time ago. GameMasters here, and I say that my sanity loss is subjective, that I am losing bits of it daily, but that we regain other bits of our sanity simply because we are exposed to the same crazy over and over and over. And so those elements of insanity become commonplace and we simply get used to it. Therefore, it no longer makes us crazy. When I first moved to Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, I failed to see a section in the back of the DM's guide that dealt with madness, but I was very familiar with Call of Cthulhu from having played it back in the Chaosium version, but also with how sanity loss happened in the D20 version. I stole those sanity loss rules and ideas mainly from these two books and incorporated them into my D&D 5th edition games. Then it was pointed out to me that 5e already had rules for sanity loss and madness. There's a section that begins on page 258 and continues on pages 259 and 260 called Madness. What's funny about it is that it starts off by citing that there is little focus on the mental and emotional impact of the dangers that characters can face day to day. And that's the exact reason that I went diving into these books for that exact mechanic. I've always tossed a fair deal of horror into my campaigns, so having the sanity loss just seemed natural. It goes on to say that different magical effects can inflict madness, as can certain artifacts and even different monsters. There is also the possibility that different planes of existence, or even just the travel from one plane of existence to another, can impact a character's sanity. On page 265 and 266, it references a sanity score. In essence, this is a 7th ability score, and however you'd create your strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, and the like, you generate your ability score for sanity in the same way. For example, if you use the point buy system, you'd still use that, but you would add an extra 3 points with which to use to purchase. If you use the standard array, you'd add an extra 11 array to the mix. And likewise, if you roll for your stats, you just roll a 7th time. Sanity loss, or madness, as it is referred to, can be either short-term, long-term, or indefinite. Mundane effects are considered to be short-term, which last generally just a few minutes, whereas long-term madness can last hours, and indefinite madness will last until it's cured. When sanity loss is inflicted upon you, you suffer an effect or a flaw. There are 3 tables included that detail out what can potentially happen, one for each level of sanity, short-term, long-term, and indefinite, and you'll roll a D100 for the result. For example, if you were to see a beholder for the first time, this might be a short-term effect, and upon rolling on the short-term madness table, let's say you rolled a 36, you would become frightened and want to simply move away from the beholder. If you are struck by something that would cause indefinite madness, something that will stick with you until it's cured, instead of an effect, you are struck with a flaw. For example, should a couple of 100 beholders just start dropping out of the sky all around you, followed by a vision of the great Cthulhu himself, you would likely want to just mentally shut down. Your mind breaks, your psyche shattered, and you'd roll a D100 on the indefinite madness table. Let's say you rolled an 84. You would suffer from knowing that there is only one person that you can trust, and only you can see that person. Of course, the DM is free to craft up their own tables to suit their campaign's specific needs and whims. To cure the madness or sanity loss, one can generally turn to spells. For example, the spell Calm Emotions is great at suppressing the feared condition. Lesser Restoration can remove the paralyzed condition. Remove Curse could work as if it was the action of picking up a magic item that caused the madness. And of course, there are plenty of other spells out there that can help in removing another player's madness. And you just got to kind of hope that it's not the caster that initially suffered from the sanity loss. I want to jump back to the sanity score, but before we do, I need to thank my sanity supporters. Their contributions to this channel have made it so that my own sanity has stayed in check. And if you'd like to become a YouTube or Patreon member and contribute, I'll leave a link down in the description. And of course, I'll add your name to this ever-growing list. Sanity scores, as mentioned earlier, is a 7th possible score. We've already covered how to generate that score, but when it comes to performing a sanity check, this is what you do. Instead of performing an intelligence check, for example, to determine the lore of a strange-looking creature, or deciphering an alien language, or even when attempting to learn a spell from a forbidden tome, the DM will have you roll a sanity check instead. You might also roll a sanity check to overcome a previous effect of when you rolled on a madness table. There is also the sanity saving throw, which is what one would roll when you run the risk of succumbing to madness. As in my previous example, you've seen a beholder for the first time, or you found yourself in the depths of Avernus below Baldur's Gate. Failing a sanity save is when you might roll on one of the previously mentioned madness tables. Of course, this all goes without say that for the most part, unless you are running a horror-based campaign, or at least one that touches upon horror in some way, then you probably don't need to worry too much about adding the sanity score or any of what we've just been talking about to your game. However, should fear and horror be something you want to explore, or should you have some grand plans to visit Ravenloft or any of its domains of dread, then sanity is a surefire way to add some extra oomph to your game. A great example I'll give. In the new version of Phandelver and Below, there is a small side quest involving a cow named Daisy. A cow within itself is fairly commonplace in any D&D adventure. There would be zero reason to fear one, zero reason to even consider one may question their sanity in looking at a cow. However, Daisy has an affliction in which she has a sickly green glow, and upon approaching her, massive tentacles will erupt from her body, writhe about and slither, and then retreat back into her body. Simply ask yourself, how sane would you remain if you saw such a sight in real life? While I enjoy using the details of sanity rules from Call of Cthulhu, the section of Madness in the DMG offers a mighty fine framework and foundation for sanity should you wish to use it in your game. The concept of a 7th sanity score can be used as a gauge to measure a character's resilience against the horrors and darkness that is out there in their world. Madness takes its toll, but listen closely. As the horrors that once haunted a character's nightmares can become familiar, losing their edge as the characters grow accustomed to that haunting presence, they realize that in the repetition of the horrific, the unthinkable can become routine, and what once threatened their sanity now merely teases at the fringes of the mind. Obviously, this is all optional and to include in your game, but my players have enjoyed the atmosphere it helps to create. I've detailed out other optional things that you can include in your D&D campaign, and if you'd like a deep dive into those, be sure to check out this playlist next. It's chock full of fun, creative, and alternative ways to play. What's been a time when you feel like your character probably lost some sanity during the course of play? Let me know down in the comments, and until next our paths cross, hold fast to the threads of sanity.